everybody. I do not normally do stuff like this, but after watching Morgan's most recent video, I feel led to share a little bit of my testimony. Um, I don't know. I think I might share it in bits and pieces, and I don't know. We'll just see. Anyways, first of all, I'm a mom of six, and I don't have a lot of time. I definitely am not going to be able to edit anything, so this is what you get. You're welcome to stay and watch it if you want. Anyway, so I didn't know anything about the occult at all. I didn't even know that was really a word um, until I started watching Adam Fink, Sean Griffin, Wes Blaze, Ken Heidelbrecht, to name a few. And um, so I didn't know what I was involved in. I had no idea. I wouldn't say that I even really got very involved. I would say that there was forces trying to pull me closer and closer to it and farther away from Yakula. And I always felt that. So it wasn't until pretty recently that watching different videos and whatnot, I started to put two and two together about my own past and stories that people used to tell me. So apparently, when I was real little, I had an imaginary friend named Bam Bam. And yes, like from Flintstones. And apparently, sometimes he was big, sometimes he was tiny. Um, but my parents tell me stories about very clearly, like if they forgot to bring Bam Bam down to the car when we loaded into the car, I would throw a screaming fit until they went upstairs and got my imaginary friend. And I really clearly remember having like an emotional connection. I don't remember ever seeing said imaginary friend, but I do remember having an emotional connection to this imaginary friend. And when I was about 4, we moved away from that apartment complex to a different town, and we moved into my aunt and uncle's house, who were Jehovah Witness. And I clearly recall telling my family that Bam Bam couldn't come with us, that he'd meet us there later. And I remember standing like in their driveway, like waiting for him to show up, and that he never showed up. And I remember like going in a closet and crying and like hoping that maybe he'd show up in the closet or something. And I was little. I mean, little, like not even 5 years old yet. And so while we were still living in that house, I remember I used to have these weird dreams, like in between awake and asleep. I would be sitting on this brick wall, and all these little Smurf like characters were all around me, and they were my friends, and they would tell me things. And um, I don't remember what they told me, but I remember the day they told me that they couldn't see me anymore. I remember I remember actually having a dream one time and asking them why I couldn't taste things anymore. Like I used to be able to taste things in my dreams, but for some reason I couldn't taste anymore. And they told me that they had to go away. They couldn't be around me anymore. And um, I remember sitting on this wall, and they went from colored to black and white. And they told me that I wasn't going to be able to see them or talk to them anymore. And I remember being really, really sad. And I was like, when am I going to be able to see you again? And they're like, don't worry, someday you'll find us. And so I was sad, and it faded away, and then I couldn't see them anymore. And I remember that I would always see them in between awake and asleep. Like I'd be laying in bed trying to go to sleep. I wasn't actually asleep yet, but I would start to see things. Um, and then eventually I just fall asleep and I don't even remember. But so time goes on, and that's about the time I started participating in church. My grandparents were Catholic, and so I'd go with them to mass every once in a while because I just really liked, the music and the kids' church and stuff like that. And I liked getting out. This was in the early 90s, so obviously there was not much tech back then to keep us entertained. Um, so then when my aunt and uncle would go to their meetings, because they're Jehovah Witness, and my uncle was one of the like main people. I remember wanting to go with them. I remember wanting to go with them because I wanted to sing and be part of the fun stuff. And there was no fun stuff at the Jehovah Witness church, but they believed in Jesus, and that was a really important thing. Sorry if I'm talking fast. I just don't know when someone's going to show up and interrupt me or try to be noisy or need something. Anyways, so my grandma was my grandma was Catholic, my aunt was Jehovah Witness, and my parents would often go to churches. My mom was, I think, raised Lutheran. Um, Anyways, they would go to churches to get help. They were a poor mom and dad. My mom, I don't think she'd gone to college yet. Nonetheless, so they needed assistance. The church was able to help them out, and so we always went to church. That was like something that I was used to. So I knew who God was. I felt a connection to God. I didn't quite grasp Jesus. I didn't get the concept of the different names because, my grandma called him the Father and my aunt called him Jehovah and my mom and dad called him God and Jesus, and some people talked about the Holy Spirit and the Trinity, and none of that made sense to me. All I knew is that we had a creator. His name was God, as far as I knew, and that's who I believed in. So when I was about 5 or 6, my family finally settled down into permanent housing and found a regular church. And I remember one day, you're a little kid, you play on the floor, you color, you go to Sunday school, whatever. You don't actually listen to people talking. So I remember one day, I might have been a little older, might have been 7 or 8. There was this guy talking, like a guest speaker, and I just remember something saying, pay attention. And I was like, huh? And it was like, pay attention. You never pay attention. This is the time to pay attention. Okay? So just do that. And I was like, okay, sure. So I actually sat up in the seat, looked at the guy, listened, and tried to pay attention to what he was saying. And his whole message was about Jesus. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. And he came to the earth so that we could have forgiveness for sins, so that we do not die the eternal death, but so that we can have life with him. All we have to do is believe in him. And that was it. That was enough for me. I was like, yes, I believe 100%. And I remember telling my dad, and of course they did the altar call at the end, which I'd never paid attention to, didn't know what that was. So I thought it was special just for me because my heart had been spoken to. And granted, I was 7, maybe 6, 7, or 8. This is like 95. Anyways, so I told my dad I wanted to be baptized, and he told the preacher, and my dad told me to pray about it, really pray about it. And so I did, and I asked God, I was like, okay, if I'm not supposed to do this, then, do this miracle for me. Take apart this toy I've been trying to take apart forever that I can't quite get taken apart. And so then I go looking for that toy because I'm like, well, I need to know. I need to see my proof. And I never found the toy at that point in time. And so my dad took me to the church. The preacher asked me all the right questions. I gave him all the right answers. And he was like, yeah, I guess we can baptize her. I mean, she's young, but let's do it. And so I was baptized. And when I was baptized, it was definitely a spiritual moment. But we'll talk about that another time. Anyways, so I was really young. And so when I got a little older, I thought I was good. I knew in my heart better. I knew better than to go ahead and sin anyways, even though that's not the point. The point isn't that you get baptized and now you're free to do whatever you want. And nobody ever told me that. I always knew that wasn't the case, but a part of me, I don't know if it's like, I'm going to use a word that might be considered new agey, but I don't know if it was the collective conscious or if it was just what people talked about around me when I wasn't really paying attention, or, I don't know what it was exactly, but I don't know. I lost my train of thought. I guess it doesn't matter. If it mattered, it'll come back up. So regardless, my foundation wasn't really rooted in anything scripture. It was just rooted solely in faith. And it was good faith. It was faith in the Lord. It was faith in the Father, the Creator, the one and only. And I never believed that Jesus and God were the same thing. I tried really hard. I tried really, really hard to believe that God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit were the same thing. But I remember being a little kid in the backseat of the car driving home from church and just praying to God, like, I don't get it. If it's real, then help me to understand it. I don't know who you are, if you're Jehovah or if you're some other weird name, you're Buddha or who you are, but I know that you are the Creator. Therefore, I give you the title God until I know a better name for you. And thank you, Yahweh, that now I do know a better name for you. And it's a beautiful name. anyways, so once I got to the harder part of life, teenager years, I believed I loved God, but I let it go. I experienced pain with my parents' divorce and heartbreak with my first love, and my only real friend was into Wicca. And just like this video, I just dived in head first. I didn't do any research. I just went for it. And I without even reading, my friend even warned me. She was like, you have to read about it first. You have to read about it first. Bad things will happen if you don't read about it first. And I was like, bad things are going to happen anyways. And I cast a spell on a guy that I thought I was in love with. And I literally said that it didn't matter when. I just wanted him to come back into my life. And I wanted him to be obsessed with me and to love me uncontrollably and only me. Fast forward a literal decade. I was 15. When I was 25, this guy came back into my life. And he was perfect. He was no longer a gothic punk. Now he was a homeowner, and he had 3 cars and a business, and he wanted to sweep me off my feet, me and my 2 kids, and move us to another state into this lovely home that he had, and we were going to have this picturesque life. And as soon as I gave everything up, everything, even my furniture and my cat and everything, and moved halfway across the country to Denver to live with him, it all the bad happened. All the bad. 3 years of bad. And it was so bad that I let my kids come back to live with their alcoholic father because they were safer with him than with me. And I learned a lot about myself, and I wouldn't wish a situation like that on anybody. And I'm glad that I got out alive, and I don't know, maybe we'll talk about that in the future, but regardless, it came true. The spell that I cast came true. It really came true. And I only ever cast one other spell ever, and it was also because of heartbreak. It was also because of a boy. It was also because I wanted him to love me. And the spell that I cast was that he would dream about me. And I literally forgot about him like 3 months later, because that's what you do when you're a teenager. You move on with your life. And I ran into him a year and a half later, and he comes right up to me and goes, "Oh my gosh, it's crazy to see you. I dream about you all the time." And that was the first one. That was the first one that I realized it's real. It really worked. And then, of course, years later, I ran into the other guy and realized it's real. It really works. But nothing good comes from it. That guy's now gay. And I don't feel like I helped him any by putting these demonic things in his life, by casting a spell on him. And the other guy, the guy that I went to live with, he's had a hard life since and before. And recently I found out that his grandfather was actually, his grandfather was actually, I don't know how high ranking, but he was part of I don't know what you call it, Freemasons, Masonic Center. And so I know this guy had a lot of demons in his life before I ever came into it. And it was actually his sister that was the one in Wicca that, I got all this stuff started with. So I was 15 when I started practicing Wicca, which I wouldn't even call it practicing. I literally just did 2 spells and played with some Ouija boards. But I opened doors, and I knew better. And I think that I was a threat because I had such a strong love and affection for Yakuwa at such a young age that I think that my whole life things have been taunting me and trying to keep me from going down the right path. So a few months after I played with the Ouija board and tried doing some spells, I started dating a guy that was way too old for me. I was 16 at this point. And we were in a really, really bad car accident with a couple other people, and one of the girls died. I lost part of my arm. I'm lucky that I have my arm at all. I almost lost my life. It's literally a miracle that I'm alive, and I'll definitely tell that story someday. It's a beautiful one. And 6 months after that, our house burned down. The house that I was living in with my extremely older boyfriend. Different one. And I got pregnant by him. And within a year of doing those spells, my entire life changed completely for the worse. I mean, I had a beautiful baby in the end, but I didn't give him a very good life for a long time. It took a long time to really be a good mom to him. And we're working on a lot of things, and he's 16 now, you know? So there's long lasting repercussions to tiny little mistakes that we make that really aren't tiny, but we don't know better because nobody really sheds light on them. Church doesn't talk about it. I mean, I remember reading the Harry Potter books and other people reading the Harry Potter books, and some of the church people really putting up a stink about it, and other people being like, oh, it's no big deal. Leave it alone. Let it go. And it's like, oh, really? Because Yahweh says that if you do that, you don't get to go to the kingdom. So I think it's important. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling. I appreciate anybody that's here watching this, whether you are or aren't, or I don't know. Anyways, so another massive occult thing that I did not, I mean, I knew, I didn't know, but I knew I was doing the wrong thing. I eventually married the guy that I was living with and had 2 sons with, and thank you. When I was about 20, I got involved with a different person and being unfaithful to my marriage, and that person was also into witchcraft, and I don't know what I was thinking. I started reading the book and applying all the Trinity BS to what I was told in church was the Trinity, and for probably a good half an hour I had myself pretty convinced. And after that things got bad. I started making worse and worse choices. I eventually left my husband, moved in with my dad, I turned 21, so of course I started drinking, had to live in babysitter. And I remember coming home from the bar one night. Yeah. I remember coming home from the bar one night and laying in bed, and I don't know what I was doing, meditating, thinking, I don't know. I didn't learn anything occult. I didn't learn anything about meditation or Buddha or other religions or anything like that. I just followed my heart. Anyways, so I remember laying in bed and I could hear something whispering my name really, really quietly. It was kind of muffled. And so I started really listening to try to understand it. And sure enough, it was something saying my name. And so in my mind, I spoke back to it and I was like, here I am, speak up, because I always mixed biblical things with the world. And I knew bits and pieces of the stories from going to church my whole life, going to Sunday school and stuff, but I didn't read it for myself until I was 30. But I knew the story about Samuel and God calling him, and he's like, here I am, Lord, Anyway, so I did that, and all of a sudden, hundreds, thousands of voices are calling my name from inside my head, and I immediately knew what it was, and I immediately started praying and trying to do deliverance on myself, and of course I was terrified, and it wasn't the first time I had experienced something. This is a fun one. I one time asked it's kind of like AI, it's like one of those, kind of like a cross between like a Ouija board and a magic 8-ball type thing. I asked it, what exists, aliens or angels and demons? And its response was, you don't want to know. And I immediately knew. And I immediately swooped up my children and ran out of my house and called my dad. And he had to come over, and I told him what was going on, and he blessed my house and walked through it and, prayed over everything. And I wasn't able to feel comfortable or go back into my house until after he did that. So, I mean, I know that I've definitely come encounter with different things. Like, it's undeniable. And I sit in my home and I speak with a person that I care about very much, and I try to tell them things like, hey, let's not do the spells on Minecraft. If the kids want to dig holes and build a house, that's fine, but we're not going to teach them how to build the spell room and do the altar at the book. And I'm risking the happiness in my home to speak up for those kinds of things because they've never experienced what I've experienced, so they think that it's not real. They think that because it's just ones and zeros, it's not the same. And so I think it's really, really important that we start, bringing this stuff up. If you still go to church, bless you. And I pray that you have patience to be able to endure the nonsense. And I pray that you have the the courage to speak up. And I pray that the Holy Spirit comes over you and gives you the words to help enlighten other people. But I think this needs to be brought up. We need to be teaching our kids. We need to be telling our spouses. We need to be telling our friends. We need to be, bringing it up in youth group settings. Like if you know somebody that's a youth pastor or, a camp counselor or anything like that, like this would be a good topic to get them interested in, because teenagers like weird things. So those would be the perfect people to talk to about the weird things. Another thing that I got super obsessed with was Ancient Aliens. And honestly, learning everything that I'm learning through Investigating Babylon and the 42 series is just, boom, 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 boom. It all makes sense now. Every last bit is just, it's all so clear. Anyways, I was really obsessed with paranormal stuff and ancient aliens and just all that kind of stuff. And to the point where even my husband at the time was, hearing things and seeing things. I probably won't go into that, but nonetheless, thank you for watching my silly video, and I would love to chat with anybody that wants to chat. So, thank you.